Line tool to draw a rectangle. Press L on your keyboard. That will switch you to the Line tool. Over in the upper left-hand corner of your drawing window, click once and begin moving your mouse. Notice if you move your mouse to the right and you get perfectly in the horizontal right direction here, your line will turn red. And if you pause your cursor for a second, you'll notice it says on red axis. So we didn't discuss this too much yet, but in SketchUp you have this green line is your green axis, and this red line is your red axis. There's a third axis line we can't see that's the blue axis, which we'll talk about later. These axes will help us draw accurately in SketchUp. So what we see here when we see this red line is an inference. We are inferring the red direction. So what you want to do is move your cursor all the way over to the right, and when your line or your edge is red, go ahead and click. It'll turn black because you finished drawing that edge, but you now know that that edge is perfectly horizontal. Move your mouse down and you'll notice that you've got a green inference. You're drawing in the green direction. If you stop, it'll say on green axis. So go ahead and click somewhere towards the bottom right corner of your screen where you have the on green axis inference. Go ahead and click, and that edge will become black now that it's drawn. You have that rubber band line that allows you to draw another edge, but before we draw another edge, I don't want you to click. I just want you to hover over this top left endpoint. This is also an inference, this green dot, and the fact that it says endpoint, that lets you know you're hovering over an endpoint. Move your cursor to the right, and that becomes an on-edge inference, a red box. Keep moving along and see if you can find the midpoint of this edge. So just keep moving along, and it will snap to this blue dot and say midpoint. So you can get an on-edge inference anywhere along this edge. You can also get an endpoint inference from the edge that you're drawing from here, and you can also hover over and find its midpoint. Go ahead and do that. Hover over and find the midpoint of this edge that you're drawing from. Remember, when I say that you're drawing from it, you haven't clicked or anything, it's just that you have a rubber band line. Hover over that midpoint and begin moving your mouse to the left, and you'll notice another type of inference. This is giving you a red dotted line telling you that you are at a place here in the environment in the SketchUp drawing window that is in line in the red direction with the midpoint there, so that if you were to draw here, we're not going to, but if you were to draw to this point, you'd know that it was exactly in line with the midpoint. Keep moving your cursor to the left, and eventually you'll get a second dotted line. You have to do it nice and slow. You'll get a second dotted line that will shoot down from the top midpoint. SketchUp remembers the last 5 inferences. So as we were hovering around over endpoints and on edge and midpoints, it remembered those last 2 midpoints as part of the last 5 inferences. And you could, we're not going to, but you could draw here and you would know that this point is exactly in line with both midpoints. So just helpful to start to see these inferences. They'll jump up and shoot out at you, and sometimes you wonder what they are, but they're all there to just help you draw a bit more accurately and quickly in SketchUp. For this purpose though, I want you to draw to the left in the red direction and keep moving your cursor all the way over until a dotted line shoots down from that top endpoint. If for any reason you don't get that inference dotted line shooting down at you, you just need to wake SketchUp up by hovering over that top endpoint till it says endpoint, and then moving the mouse. Now you don't have to move it and keep that dotted line attached. You can just come back down to red, move it over, and that dotted line should shoot down. When you have a red inference and you've got that dotted green inference, go ahead and click to set that endpoint. Now that edge is drawn, and then move your mouse up in the green direction until you get to that original endpoint, and click to finish drawing your rectangle. Now when you draw in that last edge, you've drawn 4 edges here, and that last edge got a surface to fill in. In SketchUp, when you have a closed loop of coplanar edges, a face or a surface will fill in. So closed loop, all 4 of these edges were drawn together, so it's closed. In coplanar, we're drawing in a top-down view. So essentially, it's like we're drawing on a flat 2D surface right now. So that's our coplanar surface. So that's why we had a surface fill in for us, or a face fill in. Now, let's say we don't want this face. Press E on your keyboard. That will switch you to the eraser tool. Try clicking once on the surface, and nothing happens. The eraser tool is for erasing edges, not faces. So in this case, try this. Hover your cursor over. Notice there's a little circle in the bottom left of the eraser part of the cursor. That's your target for your erasing. So hover that over that top edge and click once. You'll delete the edge, and you'll also lose the face or the surface. That's because you've lost your closed loop. These edges are coplanar, but you don't have a closed loop of them. Undo back one step so that you have your rectangle back. So let's say that you wanted to get rid of the surface, but you didn't want to have to get rid of that edge. Well, it turns out you can be in any tool. You need to right-click on the surface. This gives you a context menu, and notice there's an option here for erase. Go ahead and click on erase. So there'll be times in SketchUp where a surface will fill in, but you don't want it to, and you'll right-click on the surface to erase it. Now, let's say that you actually want that surface back. Now, of course, we know that we could undo, but let's talk about a different thing that we can do here, because there will be times in SketchUp where you'll have a closed loop of coplanar edges, and for some reason you'll have lost a surface or it won't fill in, and we need to know how to fix that. So press L on your keyboard for the line tool, and try this. Hover over one of the endpoints. I'll hover over this top corner endpoint, for example, and click on it. Then move your mouse, and I want you to trace over all the way down to the next endpoint and click, and that surface will fill back in. This is known as healing a surface. It's just waking SketchUp up and saying, hey, I've got a closed loop of coplanar edges. Can you go ahead and fill that surface in for me? And just so that you know, you only have one edge here. We don't actually have 2 edges that are now cluttering up our drawing. That edge that we drew on top of the existing edge merged together, so it's just one edge for later.